My name is Volker Vrage. As I said, Volker with an F. For the Germans around you, that's a very, very strange way to write it. But my father found it more interesting than the regular way of doing it. I just, half a year ago, founded a little company called Vrage Antwort. Is anyone speaking any German around here? No one? Well, you will know the fun of the Vrage Antwort. Vrage sounds a little bit like Frage, which is the German word for question. So for all my life in my professional life, people were asking me like, eine Frage, Herr Vrage, which means sort of like a question, Mr. Question. And Vrage Antwort, you will guess that Antwort is the word for answer. So as I said, I worked in advertising for 20 years as a creative in large advertising agencies in Germany, Switzerland, and Turkey. And I also did my MBA about half a year ago, and so I sort of moved into more of a change management kind of atmosphere and founded this company in order to help companies find creative solutions for business problems, mainly on the change management side. And change is the thing I'm going to talk about today. Clicker working? Yes, it is. There's hello. And by the way, this I hope this cools you down a little bit on a quite hot day. These are pictures from Switzerland near the Jungfrau mountain, Jungfraujoch. They actually did have winter up there this year. We didn't have any down low in Switzerland. As I said, I'm going to talk about change and change management. As I said, 20 years in advertising, I've experienced quite a lot of change. I remember when I was a junior copywriter and we had to print out stuff. We had these blue screens on DOS, and we had to have a disk in order to, save the bit of copy that we've been writing and go over to some other computer, plug it in, upload the file, and print it out and then walk to somebody and hand it over, and they would go to the secretary and change all the things you've been writing, and you would never find out about it. Our designers didn't have apples. I mean, that even didn't exist in those days. They were actually doing their work manually. And I'm talking about a time that's like 20 years ago. We didn't have any networks and things like that. So a lot of things have changed over the course of time, and obviously, everybody has been had some sort of effect of what we always call the digital revolution. It's not just in printing; it's in advertising as well. Lots of the volume of business that has gone into traditional advertising agencies has over time moved towards digital agencies. They're taking a lot out of the budgets that we used to be getting. So we're trying to do digital advertising as well, and say we can do it too. Yes, we can. So we get the volume back that we lost to the digital guys. It's like really difficult. The one thing that I have hardly ever experienced in those 20 years of advertising is something called change management. I mean, we've been doing all kinds of major changes in our advertising agencies, like buying other advertising agencies, and no one would call it a change project, which is quite stupid, to say the least. Or we've lost like a third of our business over the course of 1 year, and all that happened was an email, or maybe people being called together in order to tell the people how many people would be leaving the company. There wouldn't ever be anything like a change management, a change program or something like that, and I always found it quite strange. And why is that? Why is it such a problem about change? Because it's, we all are talking about change all the time. I mean, we say like the only constant in life is change, and yet we fear it and we try to avoid it. We try to stick to, what everybody says, we've been always doing it like this and we will keep on doing it like this and until we hit the wall. And that's basically how lots of businesses are working these days. And the interesting thing about change is that it's unavoidable, yes, of course, and also that there are two kinds of change, and that's what I find most interesting. There is the kind of change that is coming towards you, that is the unavoidable one. Things are changing, and you are, going to have to face it one way or another. And there's that other kind of change that we all know, that we can change things. Anyone can change stuff around themselves. We can change our lives, we can change our jobs, and some people can even change the world. We know a lot of people who have, over the course of their lives or part of their lives, changed a lot on the planet. Mother Teresa or Gandhi or whatever, these people haven't used modern technology to change the world, they did it themselves, just by marching somewhere or helping someone or inventing something. So there are two kinds of change. And as I said, I did my MBA on the side over the course of the last 2 years. And one thing, we learned a lot of really interesting things in business school. And one of the things that always sort of sticks with me is this one. When the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is in sight. It sort of tells you about the two ways of change and how they interact. Things are going to change, and if I don't change as a consequence of the change coming towards me, things are going to change quite dramatically. I'm probably not going to be there anymore if I don't change. So that's why you need to have some sort of awareness of change, and you have to sort of think about it and embrace it and change things yourself. If you look at the literature in change management, it's mostly about how you change things. You face a problem, you change things, and you really change it deeply. So is there a bad variety of change? Is the change that's coming towards us a bad one? The digital thing, is it bad? No, it really isn't. It's only bad if you don't change on the inside. If you just let it come and let it hit you and you don't react, bad one. There's lots of advertising agencies who have basically gone down as a consequence of the digital revolution, and them just sleeping through it. So on the other hand, there's lots of companies that have said, oh, this is cool, this is really great. The digital revolution is actually a big opportunity for printers, for advertising agencies, for car builders. There's all kinds of possibilities in it. And basically the difference between having success and not having success these days is sort of whether you embrace it or you don't embrace it. I know lots of advertising agencies that are still struggling with trying to, meet the demands of the digital age in advertising, and are still, not succeeding at it. And I know other agencies who started it like 10, 15 years ago, and are actually doing really, really well. Some are totally integrated, and some are having like some digital guys in this corner and some offline guys in the other corner, and they just don't talk to each other, they don't know each other, they don't like each other. And at least in advertising agencies, we have to sort of work with this. We have to sort of try to, what I always say is the digital guys and the offline guys, they're like oil and vinegar. If I don't shake it all the time, they'll separate again. That's not a natural mix in some way. I don't know how it is in your business, but it's a constant way of working on the people in order to make them understand that, yes, digital, offline may look like two different things, but actually it's one big thing, and we sort of have to, work with each other in order to, make the opportunities work for us. So for me, at least, there are two kinds of change, and both of them are good. And that's what I try to make people understand, that if they embrace the change that's coming towards them, react to it, implement it, and do something positive about it, then it's going to always be in their favor. It's always going to work for them. What does it take? And that's basically what I'm trying to tell companies. The thing that I think is most important when meeting change is this thing: creativity. On my little business card, it says creative solutions for business problems. If you look at the definition of creativity in any dictionary, it will say that it is a novel or surprising or new way of solving a problem. It is not about, drawing sketching things or putting paint on canvases or something like that. Creativity is actually solving a problem. And yes, the digital revolution or any other thing that is approaching us and is changing our business models is a problem. If we have to sort of deal with it, it's a challenge. And without a creative way of dealing with this, our chances are not going to be good, to succeed and to use it to our advantage. So when I say creative solutions for business problems, I don't mean painting by numbers or something like that. It's actually going into every single aspect of what a company does and look at it from a different angle, trying to implement something from other industries, just being creative about every aspect. Because I think that creativity should actually be part of every aspect what a company does. It is actually also based on a different way of looking at improving businesses. These days, I don't know how you experienced it over the last 20 years, how big the companies are that you're working for, but most of them have had like 2 decades of cost cutting, 2 decades of efficiency programs, and cutting here, slicing there, improving process over there, and all of it has both basically been in order to improve bottom lines, in order to make more money from the company. As a consequence of this, most companies have gone to a point where they have not just cut away the fat, they have also cut away part of the muscle. And some companies have even gone as far as going down to skeleton level. So they're really, really going deep. And the efficiency programs, on the other hand, have sort of increased the volume of work on every desk to a point where efficiency is basically the only chance you have in order to cope with it. So you are just like working, getting off the table, and the chance to have some time to really turn something good to something very good is getting less and less. So what advertising agencies, for example, have become is places that take something, get it out into the system quickly, and get it out of the system as quick as possible again. And polishing is not really that much left anymore. Not much time left for that. So if there is hardly anything left I can cut, if there's hardly any more efficiency I can get out of the system, my theory is the only thing that's actually left is trying to use the creative resources that any company has. Because I just came back from Prague having a workshop on creativity in business. And it was really interesting because those weren't actually agency people, they were actually client-side people. And when I asked them what they thought was creativity, they obviously said, yeah, it's the guys that are doing the layouts and the headlines and things. And I said, well, I put my definition out again about how creativity is problem solving. And then I asked them, you've got 1 hour time to find creative ways of doing your side of the job more creatively. Just think about what you are doing and find ways of doing it differently, finding ways of, what's bothering you in your job and what can you do in order to change it. They worked for 1 hour, and every single one of those 4 groups came up with 3 really cool concepts of doing things differently. And it wasn't really very difficult for them. They were just discussing what was bothering them, and they were trying to come up with solutions, like sitting closer together in groups, having a structure that is not hierarchical but rather project-based and things like that. So there's lots of ways of doing things differently and being more successful as a consequence. And that's creativity. That's very, very simple. So when I try to tell people how to be more creative about what they do, they ask, yeah, but where should I start? What are the parts of my business where I can really do something more creatively? And I say, look at structure. It's really interesting how over the last decades, the structures within companies and how they are organized have hardly changed at all. When I look at how, again, my experience, advertising agencies have been structured 20 years ago and how they are structured today, nothing has changed. There's the CEO, there's some department heads, there's some group heads, and there's a lot of people down there. and all of the people down there are sort of like put in silos that are reporting to the guy in the department head. And it's, as I said, the digital revolution has changed a lot in the way we are working and in the way our business model has evolved. And we are still working in the same structures we've been working 20 years ago. Then we are wondering, why are so many people not going into our industry anymore? And when we look at where they are going, they're all going to Facebook and Google and all of these digital companies. And because, first of all, yeah, they seem to be cooler and it seems to be more interesting to work for something like that. But it's also that they have a completely different way of structuring themselves. And it's smart. Google, for example, they have an informal structure. They have a project. They look at the project. They look at the needs of the project. And then they look at the people they have in the whole company. And then they choose the 5, 10, whatever they need, 15 people that are the best to do that project. And then they put them together. And then they are a unit for the duration of the project. And when the project is over, they dissolve again. And then they are put in other groups for new assignments. It's a very different way of structuring work. It's a very different way of looking at structure at all. It's very flat, very transparent, and very flexible. But it is definitely the best for the project that's coming in. And it's definitely the best for the client who has briefed the project into the company. What do we do instead? We get a brief. We look at the department heads and say, oh, he's got a lot to do, he's got a lot to do, or he just lost that client. We give it to this guy. So, and he says, okay, I got this brief now, and then he's looking at his guys, and he doesn't look at who's the best fit to do that. He looks at the one who's got time. So it's sort of like a lottery, how work is assigned in companies. And of course, the people who are, in the end, doing the job, will just say, okay, what is this? Look at it, go to their desk, and do their stuff as best as they can. But if you look at the talent and the creativity and the abilities within the whole organization, the project probably would have deserved something better. And probably the single person that has been assigned the project could have actually been a better person on some other project, and vice versa. So they could have had more fun doing that. So structure. It's a great way to start being more creative within your company. Or if you look at workflow, how is work being put through a system? Again, in the last 20 years, that hasn't changed within our business at all. And when I look at the digital industry again, how programmers, programming companies and how design companies are doing workflow, it's a completely different way of working. They have something that's called agile management. And agile is sort of like a very strict and very structured routine of putting work in on one side and getting the best possible result on the other side. They define the goal. And they say the goal has to be something like really, really cool. It has to be something world-changing. Otherwise, it's not worth trying to get there. And it should ideally be even better and higher quality and more revolutionary than what you might have been briefed in the beginning. And then what they do, every day you meet, every day you put a list of tasks, and you make sure that all of these tasks are done until that person. Meetings where you say, somebody should take care of this. Somebody should take care of, the reservations for blah, 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 something. And it's always, staying with somebody should. It's really funny. I don't know if this ever happens to you, but, we say, somebody should take care of this. Oh, yes, somebody should, And then you just go back to your coffee and somebody should. And nobody does. It's really funny. So Agile basically says for every task, subtask within a piece of business, you define everything that needs to be done, and every single subtask needs to have a person and a date. Otherwise, it's just not complete. And every day you go back again and look at, what is due today. Because if somebody doesn't do his stuff until the date due, we always think, oh, that guy just fucked up. Well, he didn't just do that. He also sabotaged the work of somebody else that was waiting for the result of his work. So the damage that one person does is actually much deeper and more severe than they would probably imagine themselves. So I guess in advertising we're probably worse than you guys are. We sort of just let the work come in, and then we just let it lie on the desk, and then like 3 days before presentation we start working, and then don't sleep for 2 nights. And then we present, and afterwards we just topple over. That's very creative too. There's another thing, innovation. I tell you a nice little story about innovation. I was at an agency, and my task was to just simply observe, analyze, and make a report. And I was thinking, these guys are actually quite cool, because they had this project going, and it was presented during my first week about an innovation hub they wanted to do. So the basic idea was that anyone in the company can be an innovative person, and every single one of them can invent something and come up with something like really cool. Doesn't have to be advertising. It can also be something digital, a tool, an app, a piece of equipment or whatever, anything. And the deal was, you start, every month, every single person has to come up with a new thing, with a new invention, and then we look at it, and then we rank it, and then we try to look at feasibility. And if something actually gets produced, and actually some money is being made, the person that invented the stuff and the company, they do 50-50. And everybody was, oh, way cool, I start inventing now, and I'm gonna make some really cool money. And then I was thinking, this is really a nice initiative, but does anybody know about inventing things around here? So I went to the CEO and I said, do you know about inventing things? And do you think your people know what's it like to invent something, how to do that? I said, what do you mean, how to do that? Yeah, well, you gotta have a process for this. You gotta teach your people how to invent stuff. And then he said, yeah, that's a pretty good idea, I guess. And so next week I went back and told them, how you can make yourself learn how to invent things. And it's really always just analyzing and asking questions and looking at things completely differently. It's a very unusual thing to do. You don't just, otherwise we'd all be inventors. We'd all be spending time in the shed or in the garage inventing stuff and founding great companies as a consequence. It's difficult. So don't expect your people to innovate or to invent stuff just like that. Go on the web, try to find out how it's done. Get somebody in that teaches how to invent things. Technology, yes, of course. That's an obvious thing if you walk around here. But there's also a different side to it. When I started my little company, I could have done some really technological, cool shit, excuse me for the language, for my business cards. I actually decided to do something completely different. I asked my designer, if we can do something, that is quite unusual in the digital times. So my business card is actually 600-gram, 100% cotton paper, and it's done in letterpress and like really nice, deep, and it's tactile. It's wonderful stuff. It's not digital print. It's like really like, the old way of printing things. Sounds kind of revolutionary around here. I know it's the digital, but there's also a different way. And if you look at how difficult it is to find a really good letterpress printer in Germany, you'd be surprised. The guy who designed it lives in Wiesbaden, and he had to go all the way to Essen to Letterjazz and print it down there. So sometimes innovation is also something, getting something back from the past. What else do we have? Workspace. I could talk about this for ages. How cubicles are like the stupidest thing on the planet. People think that if you have open floor plans, that this will be better for productivity because people will be talking to each other more, and it would be more like a community of people working with each other. I think the only people that have really benefited from open floor plans in companies are the companies who construct earphones, headphones. Because in our companies, first thing they do is slap a piece of headphones, it's the Dr. Dre, the bass, the big ones, and they just submerge in there. They're not talking to each other. They're all listening to a different CD and gone. It's not communicative. Workspace. I went to New York a year ago, and we visited Bloomberg. a very interesting thing. You wouldn't think that Bloomberg, you know, the TV financial report and stuff, news and all. Yep, I'll be done in a minute. That these guys are like really efficient and fast and, you know, very American, you know. And I was really surprised that on every floor there is at least one social zone. It's like a giant open space. Around it are like free soft drinks, juices, coffee machines. It's all free. They have cookies and all the health food like chips and crisps and whatever. You know, there's like all kinds of food and it's all free for everyone. And why do I do that? Because they want people to work there? No, because they want to get people to get together, to talk to each other, to get to know each other, and to start thinking about ideas. You know, what are you working on? Oh, yeah, that's interesting. You know, they start sharing ideas. They start sharing knowledge, news. It's really, really helping them to be innovative and to come up with ideas from the people, not towards the people. They're doing it by themselves. They go, hey, boss, I just talked to this other guy from that other department, and we have this great project we want to be doing. Great. Wonderful. Finance. You can even be creative about finance. You know, not that creativity that is, you know, disobeying the rules, you know, like Credit Suisse. I live in Switzerland, sorry for that one. It's actually, if you look at the Steve Jobs book, and this is my last little story, I'll be really done in a few seconds. One of the most amazing things that I found in that book was how they invented iTunes. And how Sony did not invent iTunes, you know, because at Apple, everybody was working towards one point, towards one goal. They were putting everything in from every department, and there was just one bottom line. Sony, they had everything. They had their music rights, they had the labels, they had everything ready. They only had to put it together, make a bundle of it, and kill Apple, you know, in their tracks. But they were all working against each other. They were all working for their own bottom lines. They were all in competition with each other, and they got nothing done. What do we do in advertising agencies? We split up the business in 5 different companies and try to make it one product. Doesn't work. I could go on forever, but I have to quit. And I think I'm actually to the point where I can say thank you very much, have a great show, and questions right over here.